So next up is Adam. We're going to be talking about logging, complete visibility logging. So let's give it up for Adam Fastman, everybody.
Terrible mistake. You make me follow that. All right, that was exciting. All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Adam Fastman. I'm the Director of Customer Engagement at Files.com. So I manage the support team, the onboarding team, and now the accounts receivable team as well. Got a presentation here on logging in our platform. This will be followed up by Devakar, who will be giving the second part of the complete visibility presentation about SIEM and exporting reports from the platform. I'm going to talk to you about the logging that's available in our platform. So we're just going to go over some broad topics on logging. What I want to do today is just show you how you can use logging features in Files.com to troubleshoot the platform faster, reduce your confusion, and just stay in control of what's happening on your site. We'll start with what our logs are for, what we intend you to use them for, where you can find them. We'll go over some real examples of problems you can solve with the logs, and how to interact with them. So let's see. First of all our log categories, they've got their own specific purpose and use. So we provide logs for really high-level auditing of the file system and changes to it, settings changes across the site, the full gamut of automated actions, automations, syncs, all the activity that goes out through outbound connections, all that. What you can use logs for, so you can use them first to just find out what happened on the site. They're very powerful for troubleshooting issues. That's largely what support uses them for. Verifying deliveries and uploads. So if you're trying to figure out why a file didn't arrive, why some external action failed, why some outgoing transfer failed, when somebody changed a setting, this is really where the guessing ends and just real answers about what happened begins. So my purpose with this is to just make sure you know about this and make sure that if you're not using these already, that you're going to want to start using them, really. So let's see. The purpose of this is not to get you to not call support if you have a problem and figure it out yourself. But what we're giving you are the exact same logs that we use if you call us with a problem. So these are here because we want you to have access to all the tools that you could possibly use. This is not to say, like I said, go figure it out yourself. Don't call us. With that said, if you're on the phone with a customer or a vendor of yours, a counterparty of yours, and they're having a problem, you might not like to have to hang up on them and call us up and then call them back. So, I mean, this is where this could be powerful for you to get a problem solved without having to take your time out of the day to call us. Now, with that said, I do want to say, if you ever think you're having an issue that we could help with, you can always give us a call. We'll help you as well. But we're giving these logs to you so that when it'll help, when it'll speed things up, you can just take advantage of them. So, I don't know, I come from like a systems administrator background, and I think when I was young, logs were like a giant unformatted ocean of tiny text on the screen that you had to scroll through forever. A lot of my time in those years was like writing tools to make the logs readable. At Files.com, logs are a first-class feature. They're a core feature. They're part of the product. This is part of what we think we're selling you. We've made them human readable. They're visible in the UI. They're really easy to filter. And like I said, it's exactly what we use in support. We are not hiding details from you. We're not pulling stuff out to make you call us or anything like that. We really believe in giving you access to what we use wherever possible. All right, and we provide a pretty long set of logs. I think at this point we pretty much log everything that happens on the platform. The one thing I don't have in here, because I didn't know about it yet, was that now we're logging the MCP actions as well. But so we provide a pretty long list of logs. We retain them all for a different period of time. The site history logs are really just intended to show you at a high level what actually happened on the site. So meaningful events that occurred. That's where you're going to see things like uploads, downloads, file deletions, moves and copies, creation of users, history of things that actually happened. So those are for auditing, saying, what happened that had a result on the file system. And that's a high level. They're very readable. That's where you go for a quick look at what happened in this folder. What did this user do yesterday? But they're like a summary. Now, we retain those for 7 years for compliance reasons, so that tends to be a good sweet spot for retention. You can use your site history logs to say what happened on my site 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. In a separate section, we've got settings change logs, which is where you'll see site-wide administrator actions, changes to settings, user permission changes, broadly speaking. We retain those forever. And the intended purpose there is, find out what changed and when. Support uses those as well. If you call us up to say, when did that user get disabled? When did that automation get turned back on? Those are the logs we're going to go look at to answer a question like that. You've got access to them as well. Now, the rest of these logs are for specific protocols and narrower areas of the platform. So we've got logs for FTP, SFTP, WebDAV, and AS2. Those are for when it is actually time to go and troubleshoot something that happened or really look deeply at what happened over a specific interface. So in your SFTP logs, you will see things that are not logged in the site history, right? An SFTP connection, generally, you got someone logging in, changing directories, listing the directory, maybe getting the stat on a file, then downloading it. All of that's visible in your SFTP logs, whereas that same set of actions in the site history logs would just appear as a download, right? So your site history logs are not spammed full of every time anyone changed a directory all day long, but your SFTP, FTP, WebDAV, and API logs do actually show that information. So when you've got to go and say exactly what is going on here, that's where you're going to go, to the protocol where it was performed. You've got logging for every automation that runs, every sync that runs. Separate from that, we've got a category called outbound connection logs, and that is where every single action that happens to a remote server gets logged. So, like with the SFTP logs, anytime we list a directory on a remote mount, that's where you'd see that. Some of these overlap. Your outbound connection logs show you everything that a sync did and everything that happened over a mount. So some of this is just about when it's time to go look for something, where should I go look? If it happened in a sync, the first place to look is probably the sync log. But if you're trying to troubleshoot an issue or get a lot of detail on everything I've done to a certain remote server, maybe you're going to go look at the outbound connection logs. And we log webhooks that we send. We log any inbound and outbound email to and from the platform. We log all action on public hosting, share links and inboxes. Most of these other logs are retained for about 30 days. So your protocol logs, outbound connection logs, those are retained for 30 days. We're slowly working, I don't know if the word slowly, but we're working right now to get that up to about 180 days. I think we originally thought that 30 days is a decent amount of time. If you're troubleshooting with SFTP, it's probably not for more than a month ago. We're going to extend that to 180 days just so you have it. So if you're not aware of where to find these in the web interface, so if you're a site administrator or folder administrator or have the history permission on a folder, you're going to have a file history icon in any folder in the file manager. That's just where you'll see what happened in this folder. And these are what we would refer to as the site history logs. So this is high-level audit information about what happened in this folder. All right, so I've got my growth folder, file history, created a file, created a photo, modified some permissions for a user. And when a user made those changes, you'll see who did them. This is maybe the logging that everyone's most familiar with. It's the easiest stuff to click on from the file manager. Now, if you need to see something broader or any of the categories we talked about, then you're going to go to your left nav bar. Again, if you're a site administrator or read-only site administrator, you're going to have that over there. And that's where all the logging type that we just talked about will appear by category. Just go where you need to go. I got my settings changes logs up here. Looks like I recently made some changes to a group to change its IP whitelisting here. So you'll see when the change was made, the user that did it, and what they changed. The settings change logs, we retain those forever so that you keep track of who's made those changes. So to make this more readable and more usable, especially if you know what you're looking for, all of our logs can be filtered in the web interface. This little filters button here will open up all the filters that are available for whatever category of log that you're in. So we're in the history logs right now. What we give you is filter by action, by user, by folder path, IP address, and interface. So when we say interface here, we mean the method of connection. So the interface is either the web UI, the REST API, FTP, SFTP, the desktop app. Those are the interfaces that we mean. Where there's a defined list of options like users, we're going to give you a drop down of all the available options. So that action drop down says file creation, file deletion, file move, file copied, all the possible actions you can filter by. The user dropdown is going to be a list of every user on your site, so you cannot make a typo and search for the wrong user. Where things have infinite possible values like IP and really folder path, that's where you fill in whatever's appropriate. But wherever possible, we make it so you can't really make a mistake there. For people whose sites have huge amounts of usage, you should almost probably always be filtering the logs when you're looking for something. What makes the most sense? If you're looking for, what a user did, obviously we want to filter by user. If that user does a lot of activity, you might also benefit filtering by interface. This is where, I only need to see what Adam deleted yesterday. I can filter it down like that. So I don't have to go picking through, lines that don't matter to me for whatever my investigation is. We'll also give you a time filter, and that's right next to the filter button. We've got a bunch of preset time periods here, from last 5 minutes to last hour to last 3 months to last 3 years, and a custom time filter. Supposing you ever needed to look at what somebody did in a certain 11-minute period 3 days ago, that's how you get that. And so here we're looking at the SFTP logs. I said you're going to see actions here that you will not see in the history logs, like, this user listed this directory twice. They listed another directory. You can even see when they disconnected and closed session. That's the level of detail you can get out of the SFTP logs and some of these other interface logs. The entire log table is available to you. By default, we show you the columns that are most generally useful. But this columns button over here, use that to select and deselect whatever makes sense. All right, so you can either expand this really broadly and see everything, or you can select the 3 columns you care about for the investigation you're on, and that makes it real readable, comprehensive, or just targeted for what you're interested in. Some of these log tables too, 30, 40 columns available, and depending on what you're looking for, you might need to use one or the other. Let's see. Okay, so you can export our logs. Any of these logs are exportable right out of the web interface, and that's a recent development that I think last time we talked about logging, it may not have even been true. I'm going to show, so what I'm showing you right now, these are the API logs. The API logs are the most verbose and comprehensive logs on the platform. When I say API logs, I don't mean logs of calls that you made to the API in the sense of like with an API integration or an SDK. This is every action taken on the platform, every API call made to our API for your site, regardless of what interface, right? So when you connect to us over SFTP, for example, you're communicating with us over that SFTP protocol, but ultimately our system translates those SFTP commands into API calls to actually do the listing, retrieve the files, and perform the actions. So, what we end up with is if you do an action over SFTP, say you download a file, say you upload a file, your history logs are going to show the user uploaded or downloaded that file. Your SFTP logs are going to show the commands that were sent by the SFTP client to do that, including all the directory changes, stats, downloads, and uploads. And the API logs are going to show those same actions, but in the form of the API call that they ultimately resulted in. So there's like 3 readable layers of what we're logging here, and that's all available to you. So sometimes it might become useful to go look at the history logs first and say, oh, this action happened over SFTP. Go take a look at the SFTP logs. If the error message in there is unclear because it's an SFTP error message, which tend to not be always very information rich, the API logs will often tell you the actual real reason that something didn't work correctly, right? So if we have rejected an upload over SFTP because of a folder setting, say you've got file extension restriction on a folder, that's not an SFTP concept. It's not going to be in the SFTP logs, but it will be in the API logs. So let's see. So yeah. Again, these API logs can be extremely verbose. This is another area where you're probably going to want to filter. But the other way that you can make some really verbose logs readable is you can export them. So this, select the columns you need. This export button up in the top right will take whatever time filter you have in place, and it will export in a CSV the entire contents of the logs for that time period. So I'm filtering these. When I filter them, the filter will apply to the web interface. The export will be the whole table. Now, I've got a whole year of API logs exporting right now. And this is my test site. I don't run a business out of here. So this still might take a while. If you are running a business off your site, a year of logs is going to be huge. So if this is getting too long for you to wait, I don't know if you can see this. If you close this dialog, the export will be emailed to you when it is ready. So we actually don't have to sit here and watch this. At any point we get bored, we can close that window and start working on something else. And that's about as much patience as I've got. Narrow it down to just the last hour just to show you the export here. That other export's still running in the background. I'm going to get that email in whatever address is associated with my account. But a short export, download pretty quick. It's right there in Excel. So from there, you can do whatever you need to with it. It's a CSV. And this works for all of our logs too. That export button's on all these log pages. So this is really slick. This is really useful. You can use this to filter, and you can use this to filter the logs in ways that we don't give you built in as well with the like Excel filter and sort. That's often what we do with those. All right. Find next page. All right. So then briefly, I just want to talk about solving some real problems. So like I said, support uses these logs all day long. Before we had them a couple years ago, I think there were classes of problems that we really could not hope to solve. That now we're pretty much batting 100 or 1,000 for solving these kind of problems. So where I think these are really useful are troubleshooting issues that have to do with third parties, especially when they're using legacy protocols or systems that we can just never really expect to get any kind of visibility into. So the two examples I've got here are a third-party SFTP client with a problem or a question about email delivery. We are unlikely to ever have really good visibility into a third party's headless SFTP script. We're unlikely to ever have really good visibility into a third party's outbound email to answer questions about why something didn't show up when it should have, or why some headless script is getting an error. So instead, we figured out is if we give you total visibility into what's happening on the files.com platform, you can put it together enough to not have to guess. We really hate guessing in support. We really hate to make you guess. So the first example, and this one comes up enough that I can generalize it. So it's a report from an external party. Their scripted SFTP transfers failing. They're running a script, and again, you're unlikely to ask them to send you their script to troubleshoot. The report's going to come in something like, I think there's something wrong with my permissions to the incoming folder because every time I try to upload there, it fails. Without access to the logs, we're completely in the dark. We've got to either fiddle with settings and say, try it now, try it now, try it now, or we've got to look at every single thing that we have set up related to this and eventually guess trial and error or tear it all down and start again. Now, with the logs, we can really just go see exactly what's happening, oftentimes without having to ask too many follow-up questions to the counterparty. So something like this comes in, I think there's something wrong with my permissions because the error message they're getting is not found. This may be related to your permissions. Your first impulse here might be to go look at the permissions for the user. So say we do that and we see that, oh no, that user has full permissions to the home incoming path, so it's not permissions. What are we going to do now? We're going to go straight to the logs. So this is an SFTP transfer, so I'm going to the SFTP logs. I'll filter it by the user that's having the problem. That might be the only question I need to ask them if I don't already know. What I actually see in there is it's not a failure to upload. It looks like it's a failure to list the directory incoming. And I checked before. I know that the user's got permissions to home incoming. But this user's failing to list a path called incoming. So now at least I know what I'm troubleshooting is some kind of failure to list. We looked at so now I've filtered this by user for status failure. So clear out everything except for the failures. And I've also used the columns button to display some more columns. And the one that ended up being really interesting is, in addition to path, on the SFTP logs, the path is the path that the client's requesting, right? So the client attempted to list incoming. And another column here called path on files.com. And what I see here is that the actual folder the client's trying to list is not the home incoming folder that they have permission to, but actually home incoming. And so, like, this is a scenario that comes up from time to time. There's a concept of an SFTP root folder on a user. When they log in, they're already in that root folder. So this user has home incoming as a root folder. So the problem here, it's not permissions. It's not that the folder they need doesn't exist. It's really that they don't know that they're already in the folder they need to be in. They've got their script changing a directory when it doesn't need to. So this makes it really, really clear what the problem is. If you get fast with these, you can be on this in a minute or less. And now you get to decide what to do, right? You can just tell them to take that change directory out of the script. You can go in and change the home folder yourself and say, try it again. It's going to work now. Again, this is why this was really exciting to us when we got these. This used to be impossible to figure out with certainty. We would have to guess. You do not have to guess anymore. Let's see. So this is just about getting to the answer faster, about certainty faster. Another good example I have where I think we just tend to have zero visibility into the external system to troubleshoot it is someone else's mail system. So here's a report where you're contacting a counterparty to find out why they only sent you 2 files instead of 5 with the email to inbox feature, and they swear that they sent them and that they didn't get a bounce back. It must be a problem with your mail server. It's not a problem with mine. And I think some years ago, there's this danger of now we're just in a back and forth of, were you sure you didn't check your outbound policies? And they're going to accuse you of having a spam filter in place or something else like that. We cannot go and look at their email systems logs, but we can go look at ours. So we've got these inbound email logs, and they log any email that hits the site. So first of all, if this really was empty, you could confidently go back to that person and say, we never got that email. But in this case, we actually did, and it came in with a status of partial failure. And we're going to tell you exactly what happened. So I got an email from myself here on the 12th at 10:34, but there was a partial failure to upload the files. And I got some details in here. Not all files were uploaded. Well, I can make that a little more readable and learn that these 2 files made it in, but we got some failures because there was an attempt to upload a file type that's not allowed on the folder, right? That folder's got a file extension restriction on it. It does not allow whatever type of file that was. So again, now you know what happened. You can decide how to resolve it. It could be remind them that they're not supposed to send you exe files. It could be remove the restriction that was placed there in error. But we go from having to spend, I don't know, days or weeks of back and forth about whose problem it is to just knowing what the problem is and solving it. And so again, if you're a site administrator, you've got access to all of this. If you're a read-only site administrator, you have access to all of this. And now if you're a folder admin or a user that has a history permission, you get access to the history logs for the folders that you have that permission on, but none of those other protocol logs. So that is not as exciting as AI, but it has made our life like way easier in support. It's made us way more effective. If people are not using them, I really encourage you to at least to go take a look and see what we can do. Again, call support when you have a problem, but this is really intended to make it so you don't need to interrupt your day to call us. Questions? Oh, we got a couple.
So this is sort of related, but it's a pain point for me. So now's probably a good time to bring it up.
Sure.
We have, the way we work with our customers, we have an expectation that we are going to get a file from them every day. So we've got a file format that they have to follow for the naming convention and everything else. And it would really be helpful to know, did I really get a file every day? And to know when I don't get a file. So I don't know if that's AI on your logs or something that could be built in to notify me when it's been 3 days and we haven't gotten a file from Acme. Maybe we should reach out and find out what's going on.
Sure. So for that, as a feature request or a feature that we don't have right now, I expect something. Tell me when it doesn't happen. That's on our roadmap. I don't know if we're going to talk more about that. No, but so that's on our roadmap. That's the actual feature, the plan that's called expectations that Vivek talked about. We are going to deliver that into the platform, and it will work that way. You will set up the expected behavior, and when there's a violation of that expectation, you'll be notified.
That'd be
In
awesome.
the meantime, if you're looking at, so in your current situation, you're expecting a file every day. They're always uploaded to the same path. I mean, right now there's some manual action required, right? Going into that folder, looking at the file history and just making sure, filtering for upload and filtering for the user in question and making sure that there's something there every day. Right now there is still that manual step. We are going to take that away from you.
We actually pass it through to the processor who really needs the file. And most times it's them coming back saying, we haven't gotten a file in a week. Maybe you should check on that. And then we look stupid, right? Yeah. But, I mean, another option would be to automate something to update a database with something and then write something to query all that. But it's good to know that it might be there.
That's going to come. We are going to take that problem away for you. In the I don't know what the ETA is, but it's high on our list. Yeah.
Yes, I use the logs quite a bit, and what I
Excellent.
noticed is that there's certain logs that will export in proper date format, and other ones that will populate in the UTC format, which I have to use a formula to convert.
Okay.
Is there any reason why some do it different way? Because on the screen it always shows me in what I would consider a proper format, but I always end up getting a line of numbers that I have to then use a formula to figure out what the actual date and time is.
So we were not talking about UTC format instead of your time zone. You're talking about something. Are you talking about
Well,
that
on the
or about?
screen it'll show, I'm in the Eastern time zone.
Right.
So on the screen it'll show the Eastern time zone date and time. But when I export it, it's the UTC time.
It is the UTC.
So then I have to convert it. But not all of the logs do that. Some do and some don't.
Oh, interesting. So in the web interface, we render everything to be readable in the web interface. It's nice and polished. So, for example,
Correct.
when there's in many cases, we translate like a unique ID into the actual name of that object, and we localize all the times to your time zone. But when you export, you're exporting the actual log object, how it really is in the table, and that's at least why they come out the way they're looking. A question of why some of them in the table are in one time zone and some in the other, I don't know the answer to that, but
I'm like, even just now, I tested and make sure, I just downloaded 4 of them, and 2 of them were proper Eastern and 2 of them were UTC.
So, but 2 different categories of log?
Yes, yes.
I think that'd be something interesting to look into. All I think I know on that is that that's how they are in the actual, like in the back end, that's how the actual log object exists. Because that's what we're exporting you to, just the raw table of the logs.
It's just interesting because it looks proper on the web page. It's
Right.
just the export's different.
That could be something to, I could try to, someone could try to get an explanation for that for you, I think.
The second thing is I worked with a gentleman, Mike, last week because we were having a real issue with our API.
Okay.
And it was interesting because when I ran the API logs, they would render to the page, but when I would export them, it would come back and say there's no data, unless I only did 5 minutes.
That sounds like something we just want to report to engineering.
Yeah. He said he was going to look into it, but I haven't heard anything.
If you remind me when I'm off the stage, I'll make sure that's been properly handed off.
No problem.
Yeah. So Patty's got a question.
Hi, I was wondering, is it possible to have more filters on the logs? For instance, like file type, like I just want the .txt's or the, a specific file type, because otherwise I have to read through every single one of them to find the 1 or 2 that, like I have a real life situation where I'm expecting, 39 .txt files, but they're also coming in with 832s and other file types. And I would like to be able to, I can filter by the user, but now I have to go through 6, 7, 8 pages. And
Sure.
even though when the time slot, but that would be, more filters on the logs would be wonderful.
Yeah. We could look into the possibility of adding more filters. I'd like, and also maybe just like to have you look exactly what you're doing.
Sure.
Someone from support or me, just look exactly what you're doing. Yeah. That also sounds like the kind of problem we're going to solve with expectations, though, right? I expect to receive 35 text files every day. That also sounds like some information you could get out of Claude, based on what Claudio just showed us. Yeah. All right, thanks, everybody.